As I have been speaking with many people over the last few weeks, one of the questions I keep asking them is, what are you doing with your time? How are you filling your days? It's been interesting to hear their responses. Maybe extra time spent in the garden. Maybe bringing out some board games. Perhaps calling friends and family on the phone or getting in touch with them by social media. And I'm delighted to say many people are saying that they're spending extra time in Christian devotion, in prayer, in worship, and in Bible reading. Now, the doctors tell us that it's important for us to keep a routine, to have some sort of schedule in our day-to-day living. But it's also an opportunity for us to take time to enjoy the pastimes that we enjoy doing from day to day, that maybe we don't often get an opportunity to do that. When this lockdown first started, I thought to myself, well, here's a great opportunity for me to spend some time reading. I've got plenty of books that I need to finish, and I've got plenty of books that I've been meaning to start. And I thought, well, here I am surrounded by books. Here's an opportunity, but for one reason and another, that hasn't fully come yet. Some of you, especially families, know full well the reality of trying to find time to yourself in these days. But as I look at my books, as I take them off the shelf, trying to find something of inspiration to share with you on this Good Friday, instead of going to my books about theology, my books about Jesus, my books about culture, my books about the path that Christ took at Easter, I find myself more drawn towards my books of poetry and hymns that express to me something of the story of Easter in a fresh and new and living way. So I want to share with you just one or two of those things that I've read. Here's a poem by Malcolm Guite. It's from a collection of sonnets around the stations of the cross. This one is about Pilate, when Jesus is on trial with Pilate. Or is it the other way around? Jesus is condemned to death. The very air that Pilate breathes, the voice with which he speaks in judgment, all his powers of perception and discrimination, choice, decision, all his years, his days and hours, his consciousness of self, his every sense, are given by this prisoner, freely given. The man who stands there making no defence is God. His hands are tied, his heart is open, and he bears Pilate's heart in his, and feels that crushing weight of wasted life. He lifts it up in silent love. He lifts and heals. He gives himself again with all his gifts into our hands. As Pilate turns away, a door swings open. This is Judgment Day. Other things that I've come across are hymns that I've found helpful. And some of you will have found hymns and songs helpful too. Rich resources that you can draw upon, that you have sung over many, many years. Continue to go back to those resources. Read them. Sing them. Pray them. Another book that I found on my shelf was an old Salvation Army little book that was made as an additional resource for worship. A little yellow book called Keep Singing. And as soon as I pulled it off of the shelf, I was immediately drawn to a song that was very special to me, with words that speak to me in such profound ways, and poetry that expresses the whole story of these events of Good Friday and my response. This is A Thing Most Wonderful by William Howe. It is a thing most wonderful, almost too wonderful to be, that God's own Son should come from heaven and die to save a child like me. And yet I know that it is true. He chose a poor and humble lot, and wept and toiled and mourned and died for love of those who loved him not. I sometimes think about the cross and shut my eyes and try to see the cruel nails and crown of thorns, and Jesus crucified for me. But even could I see him die, I could but see a little part of that great love which, like a fire, is always burning in his heart. And yet I want to love thee, Lord. Oh, light a flame within my heart, until I love thee more and more, until I see thee as thou art. During this day of remembering the work of Christ on the cross, the darkest of days, I am reminded that the light of the world, by his great love, lights up my heart, lights up your heart, and illuminates this darkness. Another author that I enjoy is a man by the name of Leonard Sweet. In a book that he wrote, simply called Jesus, a Theography, he writes this: "We live in the light of Easter Sunday, but against the weight of Good Friday. Even as we row against the current and strain from the errors and horrors of this no-name stream, we know that the wind and the tide are in our favour. These harrowing times, that often seem to be winning, have already been defeated. The power of the resurrection overcomes all darkness. Those who walked in darkness have seen a great light." As best we can, we prophesy our way forward to that final, universal Easter Sunday. Of course, the book I must ensure that I am constantly reading and coming back to time and time again is God's Word, the Holy Scriptures. We've been reading the account of Christ and him going to Calvary from the Gospel of St. Matthew. And so we turn again to Matthew and just look at a couple of verses. Matthew chapter 27, verses 50 to 52. "And when Jesus had cried out in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split. The tombs broke open, and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life." The Gospel writer Matthew depicts in very dramatic terms the final moments of Christ on the cross. And in these moments we are familiar with that story. The curtain in the temple being split in two, signifying that there was full and free access to God for all people. But did you catch the other moment? Did you catch amongst all the darkness of that day, there remained resurrection, life and power? For Jesus Christ, the light of the world, conquers all darkness. That same power, that same light, that same love is for us today. Even if we are feeling pressed in, even if we are feeling subdued, even if we are feeling the darkness. And behold, there is light in the darkness. May we, on this day of remembering the sacrifice of God through Jesus Christ, may we remember that within the darkness, the light of the world still shines. May God bless you.